The telephone felt unusually heavy in my hand that morning. I had called to ask my son David about his upcoming wedding date, my heart filled with anticipation and maternal joy. But what happened next shattered my world into a million pieces. My daughter-in-law Sarah stood before me, her lips curved into a smile that sent chills down my spine. Her words came out slowly, deliberately, like drops of poison. "Oh, Margaret, we actually got married yesterday." It was a very intimate affair. We only invited people who truly matter to us. People who truly matter. Those 5 words echoed in my mind like thunder. I stood frozen in my living room, the same living room where I had dreamed of celebrating their engagement, their wedding preparations, their joyous return as newlyweds. But I was not someone who mattered. For 4 long years, I had been their financial lifeline. Every single month, without fail, I transferred $600 for their rent. When their apartment needed furniture, I bought every single piece. When their refrigerator stood empty, I filled it with groceries. When they had emergencies, I was always there with my checkbook open and my heart ready to help. And now, I learned that I did not matter enough to witness the most important day of my only child's life. My son David sat on the couch, the very couch I had purchased for their apartment, avoiding my eyes like a guilty child. Sarah made herself comfortable, examining her freshly manicured nails with the satisfaction of someone who had just won a battle. Hanging in my bedroom closet was a beautiful lavender dress. I had spent $250 on it, more than I usually spent on myself in 6 months. I had imagined how I would look in the wedding photographs, standing proudly next to my son, dabbing happy tears from my eyes as he said his vows. Those photographs would never exist. I would never be in them. For weeks before this moment, I had been planning everything. I had saved $1,500 to give them as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Rebecca in Boston to share the happy news and coordinate travel plans. I had deep cleaned every corner of my house, imagining them stopping by after the ceremony to celebrate with me, to share cake and champagne, to let me be part of their happiness. All of that crumbled in an instant with those 5 devastating words. People who truly matter. David finally looked up at me, and I could see he had rehearsed his explanation. "Mom, it was really just a tiny ceremony. Just us 2 and the legal witnesses. Very simple, very quick, but I knew the truth. I had seen the photographs on social media, the platform where I was apparently welcome to observe their life from a distance, but not participate in it. I saw Sarah's parents beaming with pride, dressed in formal attire. I saw her 3 siblings raising champagne glasses in celebration. I saw Sarah in an elegant white gown that I had unknowingly helped purchase with the $1,000 I had given her the previous month for what she called personal necessities. Saw everything I was never meant to see. I saw the truth they had tried to hide from me. 1 week later, exactly 7 days after that soul-crushing humiliation, my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, her voice was completely different from the confident, cold tone she had used when telling me I didn't matter. Now she sounded desperate, almost frantic. "Margaret, we have a serious problem. The rent is overdue, and our landlord is threatening eviction. He says if we don't pay by Friday, he's starting the legal process. You forgot to make the monthly transfer." Her voice trembled with what she probably thought sounded like genuine distress. The world was apparently ending because their free money hadn't arrived on schedule. I remained silent for several long seconds, thinking about all the times I had rushed to the bank to make that transfer. All the times I had rearranged my own plans, canceled my own appointments, postponed my own needs to ensure they had a roof over their heads. All the times I had eaten simple meals of rice and beans so I could afford to give them money for their wants, not just their needs. And now, after deliberately excluding me from the most significant moment of their lives, They had the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened, as if I should simply continue being their personal ATM machine. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady and calm in a way that surprised even me. "Didn't I tell you that I only help people who truly matter?" The silence that followed was profound. I could almost hear her brain scrambling to process what I had just said. For the first time in our relationship, it was not me who was trembling with anxiety. It was her. "Margaret, I don't understand," she stammered, her voice rising slightly. "We've always mattered to you. You've always said I'm like a second daughter to you." Lies. Every word was a carefully constructed lie, wrapped in that sweet, manipulative voice she only used when she needed something from me. The same voice she had used when asking for money for her wedding dress. The same voice she had used when requesting funds for their honeymoon to Hawaii. The same voice she had used when they needed money for wedding rings. Rings I had helped purchase without ever knowing I would be excluded from the ceremony where they were exchanged. For so many years, I had lived with this constant, exhausting feeling of walking on eggshells. I weighed every word I spoke, analyzed every gesture I made, carefully selected every gift I gave, desperately hoping to receive even the smallest crumb of genuine affection from my own son. I had tried to be the perfect mother, the agreeable mother-in-law, the silent benefactor who never complained when they treated me as if I were invisible. But that phrase, "people who truly matter," had awakened something inside me that had been sleeping for far too long. It awakened my self-respect. That evening, after I ended the phone call with Sarah, I sat down with my bank statements and a calculator. I needed to see the truth in numbers. I needed to quantify exactly how foolish I had been. Monthly rent payments of $600 multiplied by 48 months equaled $28,800. Groceries and household supplies, averaging about $250 monthly, added another $12,000. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversary gifts, at least $4,000 over the years. Sarah's supposed medical emergencies that always seemed to happen right before expensive purchases, $1,200. The car loan they promised to repay but never did, $3,000. Repairs to their apartment that should have been the landlord's responsibility, $800. Furniture for their living room and bedroom, $2,000. The total was staggering, $49,800, nearly $50,000. That represented almost half of the life insurance money my late husband had left me. Money he had worked hard to provide so I could live comfortably in my retirement years. Money I had systematically drained away trying to purchase love from my own child. My phone rang again. David's name lit up the screen. Normally, my heart would have raced with hope. Perhaps he was calling to apologize, to explain that everything had been a terrible misunderstanding, to beg for forgiveness. But this time I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times, then silence. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Sarah this time. I let that call go unanswered too. Then a text message appeared. "Mom, please answer. We really need to talk about this situation." I deleted it without responding. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk with no destination. No errand, no purpose except my own enjoyment. For years, every time I left my house, it was for them. To the bank to transfer their money, to the grocery store to buy their food, to the pharmacy to pick up Sarah's prescriptions. Today, I walked simply because I wanted to feel the sunshine on my face. I passed the park where I used to take David when he was a little boy. I remembered that sweet child who would hug me tightly and tell me I was the best mother in the world. When had that loving boy transformed into this man who saw me as nothing more than a source of money? When had I allowed this to happen? When had I started believing that love could be purchased with bank transfers? At some point during my walk, I found myself standing in front of First National Bank, the place where I had made countless automatic transfers to their account. Through the glass window, I could see Mr. Patterson, the branch manager who had known me for over a decade. He had processed every single one of those transfers, watching my retirement savings drain away month after month. I walked inside with determination and headed straight to his office. "Mr. Patterson," I said, sitting down across from him, "I need to cancel all automatic transfers to my son's account." Effective immediately, he looked surprised. For 4 years, these transfers had been as regular as sunrise. "Are you certain, Mrs. Morrison? Has something happened?" His concern seemed more genuine than any interest David had shown in my well-being for months. "What happened," I replied slowly, "is that I finally opened my eyes. I want everything canceled, and I also need information about protecting my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have any access to my money." While Mr. Patterson processed the cancellations, my phone vibrated constantly. David calling, Sarah calling, David again. It was as if they had developed a sixth sense that detected when their money source was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Morrison," Mr. Patterson said, as he handed me the paperwork, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but over these years, I've watched you be extraordinarily generous with your family. I hope you're not being pressured or coerced into making these changes." His words touched something deep inside me. This man, who knew me only through banking transactions, showed more genuine concern for my welfare than my own son had shown in years. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Patterson. Actually, quite the opposite. I've finally stopped pressuring myself to be someone's personal bank." When I left the building, I felt strangely weightless, as if I had left an enormous burden in that office. For the first time in 4 years, my money was entirely my own. I had no obligations to people who saw me as a resource rather than as a human being. That evening, I thought about all the things I hadn't done because I was always saving money for David and Sarah. The trips I had canceled, the friends I had stopped seeing, because I needed to be available for their constant emergencies, the hobbies and interests I had abandoned, because every dollar I spent on myself was one less dollar available for their needs. When I arrived home, I noticed 3 cars parked in front of my house. David's car, Sarah's car, and one I didn't recognize. Through my windows, I could see movement inside my house. Inside my house, my blood ran cold. They had keys. I had given them keys years ago because I trusted them, because I believed family should have access to each other's homes, because I thought they might need to help me someday. I took several deep breaths before opening my front door. This was going to be the first real confrontation of my new life. The scene inside was something I will never forget. David sat on my sofa with his head buried in his hands, the picture of despair. Sarah was pacing back and forth like a trapped animal, her earlier confidence completely gone. And an older gentleman I didn't recognize was sitting at my dining room table, reviewing papers, my personal documents. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice louder and firmer than I expected. All 3 turned to look at me as if I were an intruder in my own home. Sarah spoke first, her voice carrying that desperate urgency I had heard on the phone. "Margaret, thank God you're here. We need to discuss this situation. This is Mr. Richardson. He's from a law firm we consulted about your concerning behavior." "My concerning behavior?" I repeated slowly. "What exactly about my behavior concerns you?" David finally lifted his head, his eyes red-rimmed. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Patterson said you also blocked our access to information about your accounts. We don't understand why you would do something so drastic." Mr. Richardson, a man in his 60s wearing an expensive gray suit, stood up and extended his hand toward me. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Attorney Richardson, specializing in family law and elder care. Your son and daughter-in-law have expressed serious concerns about your mental well-being. They've asked me to evaluate the situation and perhaps discuss some options for managing your affairs more collaboratively. I did not shake his hand. Instead, I walked directly to my dining table and gathered all the personal documents he had been examining without my permission. "These are my private papers," I said coldly. "You have absolutely no right to look at them without my explicit consent." "Mom," David interjected with that condescending tone he had perfected over recent years, "we're worried about you. Your behavior has been very erratic lately. First you cut us off financially without any explanation, then you refuse to answer our calls. We think you might need professional help. Maybe you're experiencing some cognitive decline." Sarah approached me, attempting to take my hand with fake tenderness. "Margaret, sweetheart, we know you've been under tremendous stress. Loneliness can really affect people, especially at your age. It's completely normal to have episodes of confusion. We just want to help you." The word confusion rang alarm bells in my mind. I suddenly understood exactly why they had brought a lawyer. This wasn't about helping me. This was about having me declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of my finances. "I am not confused," I said with absolute clarity, my voice cutting through the room like a knife. "In fact, I'm clearer-minded than I've been in years. And all three of you are going to leave my house right now." Mr. Richardson adopted that professionally reasonable tone that lawyers use when they want to sound sympathetic. "Mrs. Morrison, I understand you're feeling overwhelmed, but your children have every right to intervene if they believe your decision-making capacity is compromised. They've documented several behaviors that raise legitimate concerns." Concerns? A bitter laugh escaped from my throat. "Such as what? Deciding that my money belongs to me? Choosing not to continue financing the lives of two fully capable adults who treat me like garbage?" Sarah's face flushed red. "We have never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us eventually anyway. We're just trying to help manage things more efficiently now." There it was, the naked truth, spoken out loud without any pretense. In their minds, I was already dead. They were simply collecting their inheritance early. It didn't matter whether I lived for 5 more years or 25 more years. To them, I was just an obstacle between them and my money. "Out," I said firmly, pointing toward the door. "All three of you, get out of my house immediately." David stood up, his face contorted with childish anger. "Mom, we can't just leave. We have serious financial obligations. The rent is due. The car payments are due. The credit card you co-signed for is maxed out. You can't just abandon us without warning." "I can't?" My voice rose for the first time. "Who says I can't? For 4 years I've paid rent on an apartment that isn't in my name. I filled a refrigerator in a home where I wasn't welcome. I financed a lifestyle that clearly had no place for me in it." Mr. Richardson pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my table. "Mrs. Morrison, we've prepared some documents that could help facilitate this transition. A power of attorney arrangement would allow David and Sarah to manage your finances more effectively. This would be purely temporary, just until you're feeling more like yourself again." I picked up the folder and, without even opening it, threw it directly into my trash can. "The only transition happening here is your transition out my front door," I said coldly. Sarah started crying. But these weren't tears of genuine sadness. They were tears of frustration and rage that her manipulation wasn't working. "You can't do this to us, Margaret. We've made plans based on your support. We've taken on financial commitments because we knew we could count on you. We bought things assuming you would continue helping us. Commitments based on my money," I replied. "Not based on my happiness, not based on my well-being, not based on my companionship. Just my money. And now that I've decided my money is better spent on my own life, Suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs a legal guardian? David tried to approach me, but I stepped backward. He was no longer the little boy who had run into my arms when he had nightmares. He was a 37-year-old man who viewed his own mother as an inconvenient obstacle to a comfortable, financially subsidized life. "Mom, we made mistakes," he said in a voice that was supposed to sound apologetic. The wedding thing was a misunderstanding. Sarah was stressed. I was under pressure. "We can fix all of this if you'll just be reasonable again." Reasonable? The word tasted bitter. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your entire life while you treat me like a stranger? It means pretending it doesn't hurt that I was excluded from the most important day of my only child's life. Mr. Richardson began packing his papers with practiced efficiency. "Mrs. Morrison, I should inform you that this matter isn't over. Your family has legal options available to them. If you truly are making irrational financial decisions due to mental health issues, a judge can determine that you require guardianship for your own protection." His words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a manipulative family visit. This was a genuine legal threat. They were actually planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. "Mr. Richardson," I said, looking directly into his eyes, "I suggest you research this thoroughly before threatening a 72-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years. A woman who raised her son alone after her husband's death. A woman who ran a household and worked full-time until retirement. A woman who, until last week, was financially supporting 2 completely capable adults." Sarah stopped crying and looked at me with such coldness that I finally saw her true nature. "This isn't over, Margaret. We have rights too. We'll get lawyers who actually fight for us." "Perfect," I replied. "Hire all the lawyers you want, with your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums." The 3 of them walked toward the door with the wounded dignity of people unaccustomed to being told no. Before leaving, David turned back one final time. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to wind up completely alone with nobody to take care of you when you really need help." "David," I said with profound sadness but crystal clear certainty, "I'm already alone. The difference is that now it's by my own choice, not because of your neglect." When I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from sadness or regret, but from the adrenaline of having reclaimed my own life. I lay awake, planning my next steps like a general preparing for battle. If David and Sarah wanted war, I would give them one. But it would be a war fought with intelligence and strategy, not emotion. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I was already dressed and ready. My first stop was the office of Attorney Elizabeth Chen, a woman I had met years earlier when handling my husband's estate. Unlike Mr. Richardson, whom David and Sarah had brought, Ms. Chen had an impeccable reputation and specialized in protecting elderly clients from family financial abuse. "Mrs. Morrison," she said after I explained the situation, "what your children attempted yesterday is unfortunately more common than most people realize. It's called elder financial exploitation, and it's a serious crime. The fact that they entered your home without permission and reviewed your private documents also constitutes a violation of your privacy rights." Her words both comforted and alarmed me. They confirmed I wasn't being paranoid or unreasonable, but they also made me realize the situation was more serious than I had understood. "We need to document everything," Ms. Chen continued. "Every bank transfer, every gift, every instance where they pressured you for money. We'll also need to update your will and estate planning documents to protect your assets from future manipulation attempts." We spent 3 hours reviewing my complete financial history. Ms. Chen actually whistled when she saw the total amount. Mrs. Morrison, with $49,800, you could have traveled the world, renovated your entire house, or simply enjoyed a comfortable, stress-free retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of two adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left Ms. Chen's office, I had a comprehensive action plan. First, change all the locks on my house immediately. Second, install a complete security system with cameras to protect against future surprise visits. Third, open new bank accounts at a completely different bank where they had no contacts or information. Fourth, and most importantly, start living the life I had postponed for years. My next stop was Thompson Hardware Store. The owner, Mr. Thompson, had known me for years because I was constantly buying supplies to fix things in David and Sarah's apartment. Leaky faucets, broken hinges, cracked tiles. Mrs. Morrison, he greeted me warmly. What brings you in today? Another emergency repair for your son? No, Mr. Thompson, this time it's for my own home. I need to change every single lock, and I want the highest quality locks you have. He looked surprised but asked no questions. While he was preparing the locks, his son Marcus, who ran a home security business, happened to stop by. It felt like fate. Marcus, I said, I also need to install a complete surveillance camera system. I want cameras covering every entrance, every window, and the entire perimeter of my property. Cost is not a concern. While they prepared everything for installation the following day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Sarah calling from someone else's phone since I had blocked both their numbers. Margaret, it's Sarah. Please don't hang up. We need to have a calm, adult conversation about this. Speak, I said curtly. Listen, I understand you're upset about the wedding situation. It was a mistake. We both realize that now. David and I have discussed it extensively, and we want to make it up to you. How about we have a special celebration dinner for our marriage, specifically for you? We could do it at your house, cook together like we used to in the old days. The manipulation was so transparent I almost laughed out loud. Sarah, exactly how much rent do you currently owe? The silence confirmed I had hit the target. Well, it's actually 2 months now. $1,200 total. But Margaret, I'm not calling just about that. We genuinely miss having you in our lives. Do you miss me or do you miss my money? I asked bluntly. Both, she answered with surprising honesty. Margaret, I won't lie to you anymore. Yes, we desperately need your financial help, but we also care about you. You're important to us. If I'm so important, I said slowly, why wasn't I important enough to attend your wedding? Why am I never important enough to receive a phone call that doesn't include a request for money? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Silence. We both knew the answer was never. Sarah, I'm only going to explain this once, so listen carefully. For 4 years, you've treated me like an ATM with feelings attached. You've used me, ignored me, and humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money has stopped flowing, you've suddenly discovered that you love me. I'm not buying it. Margaret, please, she began. I cut her off. There is no please anymore. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to be at your wedding. Now I'm making mine. Goodbye, Sarah. I hung up and turned off my phone completely. I didn't want any more interruptions during my day of liberation. That afternoon, I went to Salon Bella, a beautiful salon I hadn't visited in over a year. I had canceled every appointment because David or Sarah always seemed to need something urgent, or because the money I had set aside for myself had to be redirected to one of their emergencies. Mrs. Morrison. My longtime stylist, Jennifer, exclaimed, "What a wonderful surprise! I was beginning to think you'd moved away." I didn't move away, Jennifer. I just forgot that I deserved to be pampered too. I treated myself to the complete package: haircut, color treatment, manicure, pedicure, facial. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty. without mentally calculating how that money could have helped David and Sarah instead. While Jennifer worked on my hair, we talked about her life, her children, her dreams of opening her own salon someday. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't revolve entirely around my son and daughter-in-law's endless needs and demands. "You look absolutely beautiful, Mrs. Morrison," Jennifer said when she finished. "But more than that, you look free. Did something wonderful happen?" "Yes, Jennifer. I finally learned how to say no." When I arrived home that evening, there was an unfamiliar car parked in front of my house. My heart raced momentarily, worried that David and Sarah had returned with reinforcements. But as I got closer, I saw an elderly woman sitting on my front porch steps. "Mrs. Morrison?" she asked as I got out of my car. "Yes, that's me." "Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Bennett. I live in the house next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never really had a chance to talk properly. Yesterday I heard very loud voices coming from your house, and I was concerned. Is everything all right?" Her sincere concern touched me deeply. Here was a stranger showing more genuine interest in my well-being than my own son had shown in months. "Come inside. Mrs. Bennett, I'll make us some coffee, and I'll tell you a story you probably won't believe." While the coffee brewed, I told her everything: the wedding exclusion, the years of financial support, the attempted legal guardianship, my decision to finally cut them off. Eleanor listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding with understanding. When I finished, her eyes were filled with tears. "Mrs. Morrison," she said softly, "you absolutely did the right thing. I went through something remarkably similar with my own daughter about 5 years ago. I also believed it was my duty as a mother to finance her adult life indefinitely. I also thought they wouldn't love me if I didn't provide money." "What happened?" I asked. "I cut off the financial support when I realized they only called when they needed something. At first it was terrible. They threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel guilty for being a bad mother. But after about 6 months, my daughter called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on actual love, not financial transactions." Her words gave me hope and confirmed I had made the right choice. "Do you think David and Sarah will eventually understand?" I asked. "Maybe they will, maybe they won't," she answered honestly. "But that's no longer your responsibility. Mrs. Morrison, your responsibility now is to live your own life, the life you deserve." That night, for the first time in 4 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether David and Sarah had enough money for rent, for food, for their various wants and whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my own plans, my own future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Marcus and Mr. Thompson arrived at 8 o'clock to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone rang repeatedly from unknown numbers. Sarah was still trying to reach me from different phones. But I had developed a valuable new skill, completely ignoring calls that didn't serve my interests. "Mrs. Morrison," Marcus said as he finished installing the cameras, "this system will give you complete peace of mind. You can monitor your property from your phone even when you're not home. And if anyone enters without authorization, an alert is automatically sent to the police department." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own son. But it didn't hurt as much as I expected. It was simply a practical measure to maintain my newfound peace. While they worked, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: call my sister Diana in Chicago. We had drifted apart because every conversation had become a financial report disguised as family news. Me bragging about how much money I had given David and Sarah, how proud I was to help them, how grateful they supposedly were. "Margaret," Diana answered, surprised. "Sister, how are you? We haven't talked in months." "I'm good, Diana. Better than good, actually. I'm calling to tell you I've finally come to my senses. I told her the entire story from beginning to end. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer visit, my decision to cut off all funding. Diana listened in complete silence. When I finished, her response surprised me. Margaret, it's about damn time. Every time we talked, it broke my heart to hear you measure your relationship with David in dollars and cents, as if love could be quantified in bank transfers. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how without hurting you. What did you want to tell me? I asked. That David never spoke lovingly about you at family gatherings. It was always, my mom helped me with this, or my mom bought me that, but never, I love my mom, or I miss my mom. It was as if you were a service provider, not a person. Not his mother. Her words stung, but it was necessary pain, like when a doctor cleans an infected wound. You know what else I noticed? Diana continued. Sarah always spoke about you in the future tense. When Margaret is gone, we can remodel her house, or when we inherit, we'll invest in the business. As if they were just waiting for you to die so they could really start living. This revelation hit me like ice water. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and my money. While I was desperately trying to make them happy, they were planning their future without me. After talking with Diana, I sat in my kitchen processing all this information. 35 years of raising David alone after my husband's death. 4 years of financing 2 adults who saw me as nothing but an inheritance waiting to happen. The doorbell rang. On my new camera system, I saw it was Eleanor holding a covered dish. I thought you might need some company after everything you told me. Yesterday, she said with that genuine smile I had already grown to appreciate. We sat in my living room, and Eleanor shared more details from her own experience. My daughter said the exact same things to me that Sarah says to you. You're like a second mother to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours eventually anyway. These are rehearsed lines, Margaret. They all read from the same emotional manipulation handbook. Do you really think such a handbook exists? I asked, half joking. Not officially, but they all seem to follow the same pattern. Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. When she resists, question her mental health. We laughed. But it was bitter laughter, funny and tragic at the same time, to recognize such predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. Did you ever feel guilty about cutting off the money? I asked. Every single day for the first 3 months, she answered honestly. But then I started seeing results. My daughter had to get a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and found extra work. They learned to live within their means. And most importantly, they learned that I was a person, not just a resource. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had postponed for years, visit my husband's grave. I had always made excuses not to go because David or Sarah needed something urgent, or because the taxi fare was better spent on one of their emergencies. The cemetery was peaceful and beautiful. Richard's grave looked neglected because I hadn't been there to care for it in months. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and talked to him as if he were still alive. Richard, my darling, I think I lost myself for a while. After you died, I poured all my energy into David. I wanted to be the perfect mother, thinking somehow that would compensate for him growing up without a father. But I think in the process, I forgot how to be myself. The wind blew gently, and for a moment I felt like he was listening. Our son has become someone I don't recognize. Or maybe he was always this way and I refuse to see it. His wife is, well, you know what she is. The money you left for me to live comfortably in my final years, I spent it all taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I've learned my lesson. I cleaned his grave, replaced the dead flowers with fresh ones, and stayed for another hour simply enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing home to solve a crisis for David and Sarah. When I arrived home, there were 3 cars parked in front again, David's, Sarah's, and 2 I didn't recognize. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The cameras showed they had brought even more people, all gesturing and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of my car. Instead, I called Miss Chen. "They're at my house again, Miss Chen, this time with more people." "What should I do?" "Don't leave your car, Mrs. Morrison. I'll be there immediately, and I'm calling the police." After our meeting, I filed for a temporary restraining order. They're not legally allowed to be on your property. Within minutes, Ms. Chen arrived along with 2 police cars. I watched the officers speak with David and Sarah. I saw my son gesticulating angrily. I saw Sarah crying again, but this time her tears didn't move me at all. One of the officers approached my car. "Ma'am, you can safely exit your vehicle now. Your visitors are leaving immediately." As I stepped out, David shouted from the street, "Mom, this is insane. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son." "David," I replied with surprising calm, "family doesn't threaten lawsuits claiming mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mothers like ATM machines." Sarah screamed from across the street. Sarah screamed from across the street. "You're going to regret this, Margaret. We have legal documents you co-signed. You can't just abandon your financial obligations to us like this." Ms. Chen stepped forward, her voice firm and professional. "Mrs. Brooks, any future communication must go through my office, and I strongly suggest you consult with an attorney before making any collection threats. Because my client has complete documentation of all voluntary payments she made over the past 4 years. Payments she was under no legal obligation to make." I watched them drive away in their cars, defeated but clearly not finished. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt confident and protected. I had professional legal help. I had emotional support from Eleanor and my new friends. And most importantly, I had absolute mental clarity about what was right and what was wrong. That evening, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter Rachel, who was visiting from Seattle, and I witnessed firsthand what a healthy family relationship looked like. They spoke respectfully to each other, asked genuine questions about each other's lives, and laughed together with real warmth. Rachel didn't ask her mother for money even once during the entire evening. I wanted that kind of relationship with David, too. I confessed to Eleanor after Rachel had left. "And maybe you'll still have it someday," she replied kindly. "But first, he needs to learn that you're a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income." Some children never learn that lesson, Margaret. You need to prepare yourself for that possibility. That night, for the first time in weeks, I went to bed feeling genuinely hopeful about my future. The following days were strangely peaceful. The surveillance cameras showed David and Sarah driving past my house several times each day, sometimes slowly, sometimes parking for a few minutes, but never getting out. It was as if they were studying my routine, looking for a weakness, planning their next move. Ms. Chen had advised me to document every single one of these drive-bys, so I kept a detailed log with dates, times, and screenshots from the camera footage. "Their persistence will actually work in our favor," she had explained. "Every time they show up after being told to stay away, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order." On Friday morning, I was peacefully eating breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras showed a well-dressed young woman with a professional folder and an official-looking badge. I didn't recognize her, but something about her demeanor told me this wasn't a social visit. "Good morning, Mrs. Margaret Morrison," she said when I opened the door. "I'm a social services investigator from the Department of Elder Affairs. We've received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we're required to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. David and Sarah had escalated dramatically. This was no longer just private lawyers. They had now involved government agencies. "May I see your identification?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course." She showed me an official state ID that appeared legitimate. "I'm social worker Linda Martinez. May I come inside to speak with you?" I let her in, knowing that refusing would make things worse. Ms. Martinez sat in my living room and pulled out an official form. "Mrs. Morrison, we've received reports that you've demonstrated significant changes in your financial behavior, that you've severed communication with family members, and that you've shown signs of paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were also informed that you've refused medical and legal assistance offered by your concerned loved ones." Every word had been carefully chosen to make me sound like a mentally disturbed elderly woman. I recognized Sarah's linguistic fingerprints all over this complaint. "Ms. Martinez," I said, with as much dignity as I could summon, "I would like to call my attorney before answering any questions." "Ma'am, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's simply a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem with speaking to me." That phrase, "if you have nothing to hide," infuriated me. It's the same logic abusers use to justify invasions of privacy. Nevertheless, I'm calling my attorney. You may wait here, or you can return another day with her present. But I will not answer questions without legal representation. I called Ms. Chen, who arrived within 20 minutes. When she walked in and saw the social worker, her expression hardened immediately. "Ms. Martinez," she said after examining her credentials, "I hope you have a court order authorizing this visit, because my client is under my legal representation, and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." "Counselor," Ms. Martinez replied with noticeably less confidence, "we have legitimate reports from concerned family members about this lady's well-being. It's our statutory duty to investigate." "What family?" Ms. Chen asked sharply. "The same family that attempted to coerce her into signing a power of attorney without legal representation? The same family that illegally entered her home without permission and examined her private documents? The same family that systematically excluded her from important life events while living entirely off her money?" Ms. Chen pulled a thick folder from her briefcase and placed it on the table. "Here is complete documentation of systematic financial and emotional abuse of my client. $49,800 extracted from her accounts over 4 years. Documented social exclusion and emotional blackmail. If anyone needs investigation here, Ms. Martinez, it's not my client. It's the people who filed this false report." Ms. Martinez reviewed the documents with growing discomfort. It was obvious that the information she had been given didn't match the reality in front of her. "Mrs. Morrison," she said finally, "can you explain why you so abruptly terminated financial support for your son and daughter-in-law?" "Because I finally realized they were exploiting me," I answered simply. "Because I understood that to them, I wasn't a mother. I was a bank account with feelings. Because I was tired of financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to love. But don't you feel it's your responsibility as a parent to help your adult children when they're struggling?" The question made my blood boil. "Ms. Martinez, my responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he reached adulthood, to educate him, and to give him the tools to become an independent, functional adult. My son is 37 years old, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his entire adult life is not my responsibility. It was my choice. And I have chosen to stop," Ms. Chen added. Would you consider it normal or healthy, Ms. Martinez, for a 37-year-old married man to be completely unable to pay his own rent without monthly payments from his 72-year-old mother? Ms. Martinez didn't answer immediately. I could see her mentally reassessing the entire situation. Mrs. Morrison, she asked after a long pause, do you manage your own finances independently? I can show you my bank statements, investment portfolios, and tax returns. Everything is current, accurate, and properly managed. Do you live independently? As you can see, I maintain my home myself. I take care of my physical health. I drive my own car. I have healthy social relationships with neighbors and friends. Are you taking any medications? Just daily vitamins and occasional aspirin. I have no medical conditions requiring prescription medications. Ms. Chen interjected. My client recently underwent comprehensive medical and cognitive examinations as part of our legal preparation. She is in excellent mental and physical condition for her age. I have the complete medical reports if you'd like to review them. Ms. Martinez closed her folder. Mrs. Morrison, based on this conversation and the documentation I've reviewed, I see no indication that you're at risk or in need of intervention. I'll be closing this case and noting in my report that the complaint appears to have been filed in bad faith. After she left, Ms. Chen and I sat in silence for several minutes. Margaret, she said finally, this is going to continue escalating. David and Sarah are spending money they don't have, hiring professionals, filing false reports, all trying to have you declared incompetent. This level of desperation is actually dangerous. What do you mean, dangerous? I mean they're backed into a corner financially. Desperate people do desperate things. We need to be prepared for them to file an actual incompetency lawsuit in court. Can they actually do that? Yes. It's expensive and difficult to win, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify in their favor, they could potentially have a guardian assigned to manage your affairs. It's rare, but it happens. The thought terrified me. They could actually take control of my money? They could try, but we have overwhelming evidence that you're completely competent and that their motivation is pure greed, not genuine concern. Still, we need to be prepared. That afternoon, I called Diana again to decompress. Sister, she said, after hearing about the social services visit, do you see how far they're willing to go for your money? They're destroying family relationships, spending money on lawyers and false investigations, ruining their own reputations, all just to regain access to your bank account. Her words crystallized something I had been thinking. David and Sarah had completely revealed their true nature. There was no going back from this. There was no possibility of genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected family member. I had always been just money with legs, and I had become a problematic money source that needed to be controlled. This realization, though painful, was also liberating. I no longer had to wonder if I was making the right decision. I no longer had to feel guilty about protecting myself. They had proven, beyond any doubt, that my emotional and physical well-being meant absolutely nothing to them compared to my money. That evening, Eleanor came over with another surprise. She had invited several friends from her community garden club to meet me. Margaret, these are my dear friends, Eleanor introduced them. You already know Jennifer from the salon. This is Maria, Carmen, and Beatrice. We've all been through similar situations with financially abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing our stories. Maria had been forced to set firm boundaries with a brother who constantly demanded loans he never repaid. Carmen had severed her relationship with a son who only visited when he needed money. Beatrice had completely rewritten her will after discovering her grandchildren openly discussed her death as their retirement plan. What hurts me most, I confessed, isn't the money I gave them. It's realizing that I never had the love I thought I had. It was all transactional. Beatrice, with the wisdom of her 83 years, took my hand. Margaret, dear, genuine love can never be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real love to begin with. Her words were healing balm for my wounded soul. She was absolutely right. I had been purchasing attention and obligation, not love. I had been financing an elaborate illusion. You know what I've discovered? I said to my new friends. Loneliness surrounded by people who don't actually love you is far worse than being physically alone. At least now when I'm alone, I'm in good company, my own. Everyone laughed warmly. And we toasted to our newfound wisdom and strength. 6 weeks after the social services visit, just when I thought I had finally won this war, Ms. Chen came to my house with an expression that made my stomach drop. Margaret, we need to talk. David and Sarah have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetency in family court. They're requesting that a legal guardian be appointed to manage your affairs. The words landed like hammer blows. I had known it was possible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it terrifyingly real. Does this mean they could actually take control of my money? If a judge determines that you're unable to manage your own affairs properly, yes, David could be appointed as your legal guardian, which would give him complete control over your finances, medical decisions, and even where you live. I sat down heavily, feeling the weight of the ultimate betrayal. My own son was trying to have me legally declared incompetent so he could steal my money through the court system. What evidence could they possibly have? You've seen that I'm completely competent. They have sworn statements from 3 witnesses claiming you've behaved erratically. They've submitted fabricated medical bills they claim you forgot to pay. They have a list of medications they claim you're hoarding without taking. And they have a statement from a Dr. Berkowitz claiming you refuse to cooperate with psychiatric evaluation, which they're interpreting as evidence of mental decline. But that's all lies. I don't have any unpaid medical bills. I don't hoard medications. I refused one biased evaluation because it was clearly a setup. I know, Margaret. But they've constructed convincing-looking false evidence. We need to fight this aggressively. Who are these 3 witnesses? Ms. Chen reviewed her documents. Sarah, naturally. A neighbor named Gerald Davis. And someone claiming to be your pharmacist. Thomas Green. Mr. Davis was the cranky neighbor across the street who had always disliked me because my visitors sometimes parked near his driveway. But Mr. Green was actually my pharmacist. I couldn't understand what he could possibly have against me. I need to speak with Mr. Green immediately, I said. Something isn't right. We went to the pharmacy that afternoon. Mr. Green looked genuinely surprised and nervous when he saw me. Mrs. Morrison, it's good to see you. Is everything all right? Mr. Green, I was informed that you signed a statement suggesting I show erratic behavior regarding my medications. Is this true? His face turned deep red. Mrs. Morrison, your daughter-in-law came in several weeks ago asking questions about your prescriptions. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely. She seemed genuinely concerned. And what did you tell her? I explained that you only purchase vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you don't have any regular prescription medications. But she insisted this was actually proof that you weren't taking proper care of your health for someone your age. Ms. Chen stepped forward. Mr. Green, did you sign a document for her? She brought an official-looking form that said I was confirming Mrs. Morrison's medication purchase history. I thought it was for her health insurance or something administrative. I had no idea it was for a lawsuit. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Morrison. Mr. Green, Ms. Chen said firmly. I need you to write a detailed statement explaining exactly what happened, clarifying that Mrs. Morrison has no medication issues, and stating that you were deceived about the purpose of the document you signed. Of course. I'll do it right away. Mrs. Morrison, I'm terribly sorry for this misunderstanding. After the pharmacy, we confronted Mr. Davis at his home. When he answered the door, his hostility was immediate and obvious. "What do you want?" he growled. "Mr. Davis, I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior," Ms. Chen said professionally. "We'd like to discuss what you observed." "I'll tell you what I observed," he said aggressively. "That woman has been acting crazy for weeks, installing security cameras like she lives in a war zone, having strange people visiting at all hours, yelling at her own family in the street. I saw it all. Can you be more specific about these behaviors?" Ms. Chen asked. He couldn't. When pressed for details, his evidence was entirely based on superficial observations taken completely out of context. The cameras were for protection from harassment. The strange people were my friends. The yelling was me defending my home from illegal entry. "Mr. Davis," I said calmly, "did you know that I installed those cameras to protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law, who broke into my house without permission and threatened me?" "That's exactly what a paranoid person would claim," he sneered. There was no reasoning with him. His testimony was based on malice and misunderstanding, nothing more. That evening, Ms. Chen and I strategized our defense. "Margaret, we need our own comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Patricia Wallace, who specializes in assessing mental competency in elderly clients. She can provide an official, unbiased evaluation proving you're completely competent. What if they've already bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they've already decided the outcome? The legal system isn't perfect, Margaret, but it's not completely corrupt. We have overwhelming evidence of your mental competence and mountains of documentation proving their financial motivation. We're going to win this." The next day, I went to my appointment with Dr. Wallace. She was a professional woman in her mid-50s with kind but penetrating eyes. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to ask you a comprehensive series of questions and administer several standardized tests to assess your cognitive function, memory, reasoning ability, and mental health. Just relax and answer honestly." For over 2 hours, she questioned me about my memory, my financial understanding, my emotional state, my decision-making processes. She administered cognitive tests, asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems, and evaluated my judgment and reasoning skills. "Mrs. Morrison," she said when we finished, "your results are significantly above average for your age group. You're not only mentally competent, your cognitive function is excellent. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are all well within normal ranges, actually superior to many people half your age." "Dr. Wallace, why do you think my family is doing this to me?" "Based on what you've told me and the documentation I've reviewed, this appears to be a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's far more common than most people realize. Adult children sometimes view their elderly parents as obstacles to inheritance rather than as human beings deserving of respect and autonomy." I left the consultation feeling validated, but profoundly sad. The professional confirmation of my mental competence was reassuring, but it also confirmed that this lawsuit was real, serious, and necessary to fight. The trial date arrived 6 weeks later. I woke up early, dressed in my most professional navy blue suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with a determination I had never felt before. Today wasn't just about my mental capacity being judged. It was about my dignity as a human being, my right to live free from exploitation, my value beyond my bank account. Ms. Chen arrived at 7 in the morning to review our strategy one final time. "Remember, Margaret, the burden of proof is entirely on them. They must prove you're incompetent beyond a reasonable doubt. We simply need to demonstrate that you're not." What if the judge is already biased against elderly people? Judge Thompson has an excellent reputation for fairness. I researched all her previous cases. She doesn't automatically favor families. She's known for protecting the rights of elderly individuals against exploitation. We arrived at the courthouse at 8:30. In the hallway, I saw David wearing a new expensive suit, probably purchased specifically for this occasion. Sarah was dressed entirely in black, as if attending a funeral. Perhaps she was, the funeral of any remaining family relationship. When our eyes met, David immediately looked away. But Sarah held my gaze with such cold calculation that I finally saw her completely unmasked. To her, this was purely a business transaction. Their attorney was an older, distinguished man with the kind of confidence that comes from winning similar cases before. His opening statement was masterfully manipulative, portraying me as a confused elderly woman who had been manipulated by strangers to alienate herself from her loving, devoted family, Your Honor, he said in rehearsed solemn tones. Mrs. Margaret Morrison has demonstrated clear cognitive decline in recent months. She has irrationally severed all financial support for her family without reasonable explanation. She has installed unnecessary security systems due to paranoid delusions, and she has isolated herself from her loving son and daughter-in-law under the questionable influence of neighbors and attorneys who are obviously exploiting her vulnerable mental state. Every word was carefully chosen to make my self-empowerment sound like dementia, and my freedom sound like manipulation. Then they called their witnesses. Sarah testified first, delivering an Oscar-worthy performance. She cried as she described how I had completely changed, how I had become hostile and irrational, how I had tragically isolated myself from the family who loves me, Your Honor, she said with perfectly timed tears. Margaret has always been like a second mother to me. Watching her mental decline has been absolutely devastating. We just want to help her get the proper care she desperately needs. Beautiful lies wrapped in convincing tears. When Ms. Chen cross-examined her, the cracks in her story became visible. Mrs. Brooks, can you tell the court specifically when was the last time you contacted my client without requesting money? Sarah stammered. Well, we always talked about various things. Can you provide a specific date and time? I don't remember exact dates of every conversation. Is it true that you and your husband got married without inviting my client? It was an extremely small, intimate ceremony. Is it true that when my client inquired about your wedding, you specifically told her that you had only invited special people, directly implying she was not special enough to attend? Sarah's face flushed red. Those words were taken completely out of context. What would be the appropriate context for telling your mother-in-law that she isn't special enough to attend your wedding? She couldn't answer convincingly. David testified next. Watching him on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most emotionally painful moments of my entire life. My mother has always been extraordinarily generous with us, he testified in practiced tones. But recently, she's become erratic, irrational, and easily influenced. We genuinely believe she's being manipulated by people taking advantage of her diminished mental state. When Ms. Chen cross-examined him, his mask slipped completely. Mr. Morrison, exactly how much money have you received from your mother over the past 4 years? I don't know the precise amount. Does $49,800 sound approximately correct? Silence. How many times have you visited your mother without asking her for financial assistance? More silence. Is it true that you and your wife illegally entered my client's home without permission and examined her private financial documents? We were concerned about her well-being. Is it true that you brought an attorney to her home to pressure her into signing a power of attorney, giving you control of her finances? We were trying to help her manage her affairs. At 37 years old, do you require monthly financial assistance from your 72-year-old mother to pay your basic living expenses? David couldn't answer with any dignity. Then it was our turn. Ms. Chen systematically dismantled their case. Mr. Green testified about being deceived into signing a misleading statement. Dr. Wallace presented my excellent cognitive evaluation results. Mr. Thompson from the hardware store testified about my completely rational decisions regarding home. Security. Eleanor and my friends from the garden club testified about my mental clarity, my renewed vitality, and my ability to maintain healthy, balanced relationships. Finally, I took the witness stand. I walked forward with dignity, feeling the weight of 72 years of experience, of wisdom earned through pain, of strength discovered through adversity. Ms. Chen guided me through my complete testimony, the $49,800 spent over 4 years, the wedding humiliation, the constant emotional manipulation, the invasion of my privacy, the legal threats. Mrs. Morrison, Ms. Chen finally asked, why did you decide to terminate financial support for your son and daughter-in-law? Because I finally understood that what they were giving me in return wasn't love, I answered in a clear, strong voice. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was always welcome, but I, as a human being, was not. Do you have any regrets about your decision? My only regret is that it took me so long to recognize the truth and protect myself. David's attorney tried to make me appear confused during cross-examination, but I answered every single question with perfect clarity and precision. In his closing argument, their lawyer insisted I was a victim of external manipulation by unscrupulous people. Ms. Chen's rebuttal was devastating. Your Honor, what we've witnessed here is not the case of an incompetent elderly woman. This is a strong, clear-minded woman who finally found the courage to free herself from years of systematic financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented absolutely no credible medical evidence of mental incompetence. What they have presented is frustration that their financial resource has decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her own assets and live her own life. Judge Thompson retired to deliberate. The 2 hours felt like 2 years. When she returned, her expression was serious but clear. After carefully reviewing all evidence presented, she began, "It is abundantly clear to this court that Mrs. Margaret Morrison is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm excellent cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, however painful they may be for her family members, are completely rational and entirely within her legal rights." My heart began racing with hope. Furthermore, Judge Thompson continued, the evidence strongly suggests this lawsuit was motivated primarily by financial self-interest, rather than genuine concern for Mrs. Morrison's well-being. The court hereby denies the petition for guardianship in its entirety. I had won. I had won not just the lawsuit, but my freedom, my dignity, my right to live without exploitation. As we left the courthouse, I saw David and Sarah arguing angrily with their attorney. Sarah shot me a look of pure hatred before storming away. David looked at me one final time. I saw something that might have been regret, but it was far too late. That evening, Eleanor organized a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women supporting each other. Margaret, Beatrice told me, today you didn't just win a trial. You won back your life. She was absolutely right. For the first time in years, my future was entirely my own. 3 months after the trial, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment in the city center. I donated half of my remaining money to organizations that protect elderly people from family financial abuse. With the other half, I began living the life I had always dreamed of. I traveled through Europe, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, places I had only seen in magazines. I took watercolor painting classes. I joined volunteer groups helping other elderly people recognize and escape financial exploitation. I never heard from David and Sarah again. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned they had to move to a smaller apartment and that Sarah got a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and true independence. In her place stands someone who has learned a fundamental truth. Genuine love never has a price tag, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Margaret Morrison. I am 73 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I must love and protect is myself.